G'day, Warbles on a lot to YouTube. I cannot pretend that I am sober. While I have only knocked the top off this Cooper's, it would be today's number 3. As a consequence of seeing how fast I could make a gentleman's straight thumb nut, because I finally reached the stage where practice makes better, and I'm actually getting slightly faster. So that explains why my back hurts, and thus and because I'm drinking in the middle of the day. For pain relief, as they say. However, drinking in the middle of the day, thumb nuts, pain relief, these are not the topics which caused me to make this movie. I'm making this movie in response to a friend of mine, Pete, who lives in Tombstone, Arizona. His channel is at HexyBase. And HexyBase has just blown up the alternator in his Suzuki 4-wheel drive. HexyBase, how you going, Pete? I guess I should, by the canons, switch to speaking to you, Pete, in the first person and acknowledge the fact that potentially your 5,500 and my 800 odd subscribers may be listening, plus anybody else who chooses to view the video. Pete, I understand you just blew your alternator up. Yes? I just watched your vid. Dear oh dear oh dear. I guess your alternator has been operating at close to maximum output most of the time, yeah? This would be, Pete, because in your profession as a bespoke, handcrafted cottage industry designer and fabricator of extremely high performance enclosures for extremely high output loudspeakers, you regularly do something that almost nobody else does, which is you switch your engine off to get quiet background conditions, and then you impose a really high amperage drain on your batteries. But you don't do it for very long, you know, like as far as your battery pack is concerned, a 30-second or a 10-second or a 60-second full output bleep by your amplifier feeding the speaker to generate the decibel pressure to create enough oscillating compression waves in the air inside your car that you routinely fracture 5 windscreens per year from high volume, high decibel overpressure enclosure demonstrations in car parks, outside hamburger joints, in the parking lots in front of malls, wherever it is that somebody asks you about how loud your car sound system can go. So Pete, as far as your battery is concerned, every time you call for a really high current drain, it's a little bit like the battery's situation when it's a really cold morning and the engine's really cold and the oil's really thick, and you go out there and you crank the engine and it might take 10 or 15 seconds before the engine finally turns over and it actually fires up and starts. That's kind of like what you're doing. You're imposing a battery drain just like a cold start. And I know, Pete, because you're a professional and, you know, PWK Designs makes loudspeaker boxes and and you have to show it to lots of people lots of times, I know you've got a secondary battery up at the back end of the car that does nothing but feed power to your sound system. But that means your alternator is working pretty hard all the time, because the only time it's got to recharge your battery is when the engine's running. So Pete, ever since your movie and my movie were both finalists in the Equals project, and we both got finalists rosettes, and you won your category and I won my category, I've been waiting to see you put SunFoil. That is, it runs on sunlight and it is an aerofoil on top of your car, so that when your car is in the car park, the thing on the roof is refilling your battery and keeping it full, even though the engine is not switched on, not running, and you're not burning fuel. And I'll be honest, Pete, for your purposes, you don't need to go to all of the lengths that I have to not only enclose it and ventilate it, but set itself up so that it'll run as a thermosiphon driven air pump which cools itself when it's sitting stationary like this, and runs as a ram scoop powered boundary layer airflow control aerofoil to stick its downwash onto the rear window and reduce aerodynamic drag by even 1% in the moonlight at 100 kilometres per hour or 63 miles per hour to you norte armed Americanos. No, Pete, you don't need to worry about any of that aerodynamical whoozy-whatsiness. What you need is a way for your car to finish recharging your battery while you're in Walmart, you know, like buying a new hamburger fork, right? Or sitting in the fast food joint eating new sort of chocolate flavoured guacamole or whatever it is that strikes your fancy on the day with Sophie, because, you know, it's interesting and let's make a blog about it. And let's face it, I watch your weekly vlog. It's great. I think it's cool. But what you need, mate, assuming that you haven't got the time and the inclination to make something streamlined, you need the biggest flat, square-edged, rectangularoid solar panels that you can fit on the roof of your car. And seeing as you've already done what I've done and doubled the battery's rated capacity by having a second battery in the rear of your car just to run your stereo system or your sound system, then I would stake my personal reputation as a time-expired registered nurse, mad scientist, hillbilly hermit, low-speed aerodynamics consultant to the Australian Civil Aviation Safety Authority, and a fool on the hill, that your stock standard alternator will be so augmented by the solar panels on the roof that an ordinary alternator with its normal brackets will be able to deal with your headlights and the top-up loads. So even though your major driving reason, sorry about the blowfly, this is Australia, they crawl around the place, even if your major driving motivation for fitting a solar panel is not trying to save fuel, and if it's not trying to save emissions, the simple fact, Pete, is that you live in Arizona, Tombstone, Arizona, and if you in Tombstone, Arizona have not got enough sunlight to justify putting a solar panel on your car to keep your battery charged, because you have a really high rate of habitually turning direct current chemically stored electricity into acoustic loudness, and thereby you strain your alternator to the point where its bearings and bushings fail at a relatively early stage, because the bloke who designed your car's electrical system, he had in mind, or she had in mind, that it would be feeding some penny ante pissy little maybe 10 to 50 watt system, whereas Pete, Hexy Base, me old mate Pete, everybody who's subscribed to your channel knows that you're feeding about 4 or 5 horsepower. Right, at 760 watts to the horsepower, out through your loudspeakers. Every time you show somebody how well calculated your enclosure really is, how much power it can make without wobbling the chrome trim on the window frames. Now, Pete, as I understand it, the only thing that was standing in your way was an expressed concern that because you break 5 windscreens a year, the structural deformation of the roof of your car caused by the compression waves generated by the diaphragms on your loudspeakers as they drive in and out sort of 500 to 2,000 times per minute. You were concerned that would impose enough flexure onto your car roof that any solar panel mounted on it would fracture itself. I maintain that if you support the solar panel at 4 points by 4 pieces of 50mm by 50mm 2mm thick angle aluminium with some rubber feet where the aluminium meets the car roof, pop riveted the vertical aspects onto the frame of the solar panel, such that your solar panel is going to be 25 to 35 millimetres, its bottom edge vertically above and parallel to your car's over-top roof line. I do not believe that your car's stereo is capable of exceeding the physical limitations that the laminate that the solar panel is constructed of was designed to withstand, i.e. they come with a 25-year guarantee against hailstones, mate. They're not glass, they are a polycarbonate synthetic laminate. So I think the idea that you're going to break your solar panel just because your windscreen keeps cracking, bear in mind your windscreen is made an entirely different method. Your windscreen is glass. The solar panel, it's pieces of silicon and wires in a polycarbonate laminate. It's flexible. It's able to cope with high impact hailstones. I'm sure your stereo will be unable to fracture a solar panel if you would simply mount it in 4 places, one roughly at each corner. And if you can't be bothered constructing an aerodynamic fairing to streamline the trailing edge of your solar panel, the answer is to drill holes in the trailing edge of your solar panel to allow the high-speed air to be injected into the centre of what would otherwise be a low pressure zone behind the flat trailing edge of the panel. This will also improve the efficiency of the panel by venting the blanket of hot air which would otherwise be trapped underneath the perpendicular framing. It dramatically cuts the cost of mounting the solar panel, and it's almost as efficient aerodynamically and thermodynamically. So there you go, Pete. You've had over a year to think about it. I don't think you got any real excuse for not taking up the Hexi-based SunFoil challenge. Fit yourself a solar panel and then look back on the cost of mounting an oversized alternator as a learning experience. Warbles on a lot to Hexi base and the rest of YouTube. Ciao. Label out, it's a malt liquor video.